take a look at this dream stock market journey for CDSL. What do you see here? In the past 5 years, the stock price has multiplied 5x. In an annual term, the CAGR, the annual growth rate, is 38% on a year-on-year basis. That's the kind of returns that CDSL has generated for its investors. On top of that, what if I tell you that this is also a debt-free business, which means that it does not need any external source of financing to run its business. So if you're an investor in CDSL or if you're someone who wants to invest here, please watch this video till the very end. I'll be telling you about their business model. How does CDSL earn money? What are their financials looking like? What is the reason for such a big growth? And most importantly, what is the future projection for the CDSL's stock? So without any delay, let's begin. Now, before I talk about the business of CDSL, here's a disclaimer for you. If a company is debt-free, that does not necessarily mean that it's a very good business. I can tell you numerous examples where the company, in spite of being debt-free, have not been able to grow their business to the levels that they would have wanted to. Thankfully for us, CDSL does not belong to this category. For CDSL, being debt-free works in their favor and they have been able to use that fact to grow their business substantially. Now that the disclaimer is out of the way, let's find out what CDSL exactly does. So CDSL, Central Depository Service Limited, facilitates the holding and transaction of all the securities in electronic format. Confused? Okay, hear me out. When you want to buy or sell shares, you need to have a demat account with you. Now CDSL holds and manages all the demat accounts across all the investors in India. There are only two depositories, one is CDSL and the other is NSDL, but CDSL is the only listed and the only public depository right now in India. How does CDSL make money? Now naturally, when all the investors make their demat accounts and CDSL manages them, CDSL is going to earn its revenue from those accounts only. Now for every sell transaction, which means every time that you sell a stock, you need to pay a fixed amount to CDSL as its revenue. This fixed amount is 13.5 rupees for every sell transaction. That means that more the number of buy and sell transactions, higher will be the revenue for CDSL. Take a step back. How will the transactions increase? By making sure that more and more users start investing in the stock market. And over the past 1.5 to 2 years, CDSL has benefited immensely from this fact. There has been a huge influx, huge inflow of new investors coming to the stock market to invest, which has resulted in a huge amount of revenue growth for CDSL. Also, the COVID waves have significantly increased the revenue for CDSL because a huge chunk of investors have started to consider the stock market as a serious source of income, which they were not paying attention to earlier. So for every investor that comes to make a demat account and buys and sells stock, CDSL benefits from there. But all of that is a complete waste if we are not able to use and see all the impact of this in their financials. So how does their revenue move? How has their profit moved in the past couple of years? Let's find out in the next segment. Now take a look at their revenue growth for the past 5 years. What do you see in this chart? Here is a business which has consistently shown an increase in their revenue. But in the last year, the growth has been tremendous. Almost a 50% upside in just 1 year, that is associated with the huge amount of investors who have moved to the stock market. And it also corroborates the fact that I told you in the previous segment, higher the number of active users, more will be the revenue for them because the number of sell and buy transactions in the stock market is going to increase, which will directly impact the revenue growth for CDSL. Now, this is about the revenue. What about the profit? Let's take a look at this chart for the past 5-year growth of profit. To a large extent, this stock replicates the revenue growth for CDSL. A similar trend in the growth, but over the past 1.5 year, the growth has been more than 100% for the profit. This again goes to show that while their revenue is growing, the costs are also kept at an optimum level, and the costs do not pose an overall pressure on their financial statements. Now you add to this the fact that this is a debt-free company. It does not need any external source of funding. It does not have to depend on any external financiers, which means that it does not need to please any investor. The only accountability that the management has is towards the shareholders of the stock, people like you and me who have invested in this stock. And for me, that's an extremely good prospect. A healthy growth in revenue, a solid growth in the profit, a debt-free company, and accountability towards the stockholders. A very positive sign for the future of CDSL. But in spite of all this, what could be the future projection of CDSL's stock and their business, and what is my personal recommendation on CDSL? Let's find out. Now, based on our discussion till now, it seems that everything is working perfectly well for CDSL. And I would agree to that as well, but only partially. Yes, the revenue is increasing. Yes, the profit is increasing. Yes, the company is totally debt free. But my only challenge, the only risk that I see is that here is a company, here is a business that earns its revenue from the market transactions, which means that the dependence on the stock market is extremely high for them. But what does that have to do with anything? Let me explain it to you. Whenever we are in a bull run, whenever the market is going up, newer investors are attracted towards the market. They make more and more transactions, and hence CDSL earns more and more revenue. This is exactly what we have seen in the past 2 to 3 years, where the Nifty growth has been extremely high. Nifty has almost doubled in the past few years, and so have a lot of stock prices. But when we are in the middle of a bear run, when there is a significant correction in the market, the volume of transactions go down significantly. And especially retail investors like you and me tend to be completely switched off from the market whenever there are signs of correction, whenever there is a bear market in the stock market. So for this reason, because the volume of transaction goes down, CDSL's revenue is also going to be significantly affected in this case. Hence, I am pointing it out that the revenue growth is largely dependent on the kind of volatility that the market is currently in. For any investor who can handle the volatility, it's a decent enough sign. But for new investors who do not know how to handle the sudden fluctuations, they might be very well averse to the extra risk and might completely switch off from the market whenever there's a significant downside. That is the only challenge that I see for CDSL's stock in the long term. Apart from that, I completely agree that the business prospects are extremely strong, and in the long term, the stock does have a potential to attain new highs. It is currently trading in the range of 1400 to 1450, but in the long term, I am extremely bullish on this stock, and I do expect that when the market goes up, the revenue and the overall business for CDSL is also going to show a lot of improvement. Alright, that was my analysis on CDSL stock. I hope you enjoyed the video. Do subscribe to Finance Lens, and I'll see you the next time.